Hello, friends and fans of FreightWaves. It's Friday, the much-awaited Friday. Welcome, you made it to the end of the week. And we are joined by Chief Meteorologist Nick Austin. Can't live without him. Gotta have the weather, gotta have the interpretation of the weather. What's happening disruptively around the nation today, and how can we drive more safely out there? Also, John Paul Hamstead, otherwise known as JP, talking to us a little bit about Savannah containers. What is he trying to make sense of for us today on this Friday? So let's join up here with Chief Meteorologist Nick Austin. Hi, Nick.
Hey, Chad. How are you on this fine day?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Look at the beautiful colors. That must mean there's some
lots
cold.
of colors. Let's start on the left coast, though, since we're already here, because there is some stuff happening out in California too. Heavy rain, strong wind up in Northern California, and that's going to last into this evening. So places like Eureka, Redding, which is right around here in the northern Sacramento Valley. Lots of heavy rain, possibly some flash flooding, which might end up closing at least some secondary roads here and there. And as I mentioned, a lot of wind. So particularly along I-5, headwinds for folks who are driving southbound on I-5. There's going to be a headwind coming right towards you. But more importantly, for the east-west routes, the secondary routes going east-west, that really bad crosswind, and that's what can really cause problems for truckers. But also, guess where there's going to be more snow picking up this afternoon and tonight?
Donner Pass?
Donner Pass, Carson Pass.
Carson Pass?
The usual trouble spots out in the Sierra. That'll probably fade out later tonight after midnight, but especially from later in the afternoon into the evening hours, that snow is going to be heavy out there, and the wind will pick up a bit for a while too.
Okay.
Now, moving up to the northeast, this has been a problem spot all day, even for the morning commute. But areas of rain, freezing rain,
wow,
snow from around central Pennsylvania to upstate
freezing
New York.
rain.
That's right. And some possible icy conditions in parts of central PA, up in upstate New York, maybe along the I-90 corridor, possible.
Some key market areas, Harrisburg.
Right. Harrisburg's probably mostly rain, but you still have to be careful. I mean, wet roads can cause trouble too. I mean, if you don't slow down out there and leave enough distance between you and the vehicles in front of you. So, but that's all gonna fade out. It's gonna move into New England tonight. But most of the I-95 corridor, luckily, should just remain wet as opposed to icy and slushy. Most, except for up in parts of Maine, I think the I-95 corridor is just going to be rainy. So, and if you notice in the middle of the country, where a lot of areas are still flooded along the Mississippi, the Missouri rivers, that's going to continue probably through the weekend, with some spots even at major flood levels still, or new areas becoming majorly flooded because of snow melt and just a lot of water coming downstream. At least there's no rain falling in that part of the country now, but I-29 in western Iowa still basically closed. I mean, there are so many sections closed, you can't really use it. Now, that's not a heavy interstate as far as freight transportation, but there are some trucks that do travel along I-29, but they can't really go through western Iowa. So in eastern Nebraska, US 75 runs parallel to I-29, and there are a lot more trucks and cars using that road. And Nebraska State Patrol has been tweeting about it, and they're saying, please slow down, don't cut really close in front of trucks. There's a lot more traffic out there, so everyone just be careful. We'll go to road conditions right now.
Okay.
We love that feature, right?
Love it. Yeah, it gives us a real-time look at what is happening.
It does, and a future look, too.
A little bit ahead of time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And so we're going to focus on the northeast, because that's really where there's that kind of messy mix of the wintry weather with rain, possibly icy, and a lot of slushy weather. And if you notice, up here in New England, up in New Hampshire, parts of Vermont, and if we slide the map a little more this way and show Maine, you'll see that a lot of the roads up in Maine as well are going to kind of be turning pink and kind of that dark red, the slushy, the snowy conditions as we go, especially in the later afternoon and into the evening hours as well. You see all the pinks on here, including parts of I-95 in Maine could get slushy. But as far as Boston, all the way down to say New York and Philly, like those portions of I-95 will probably just be wet as opposed to slushy and icy with the wintry weather, but still going to be a lot of problem spots up in the Northeast. So heading into the weekend, though, it looks like there's not going to be really any big major weather systems across the country. There will be areas of rain and snow, but nothing too major, so that's good. It should be relatively quiet heading in through most of the weekend.
Thank goodness, because we can only cover it for you each and every business day. I'm glad to hear that the weather is taking a little bit of a break over the weekend too. Thank you so much, Nick. Now we're going to look at what is happening with volumes in the Port of Savannah. John Paul Hampstead, hello.
Chad, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure, dude.
Great to have you here.
So what we've got on this chart
What do you have up your sleeve?
Outbound tender volume index for Savannah. That's the blue sort of mountain you see. That's volumes coming out of the Savannah market, truckload volumes. And then we've also got that compared to otri.savannah, which is the outbound tender rejections. It's the percentage of all the loads being tendered out of that market that are being rejected by carriers. Now note that this is on a dual y-axis, so we're actually looking at 5.27% of all loads being rejected. Okay. And then the index value for OTVI is 90. The reason why I bring this up is because the Port of Savannah recently sort of posted record March container volumes. It was their biggest March ever. They did about 410,000 20-foot equivalent units in volume, representing 15.5% growth year over year from March 2018. So that port continues to do really well. They're about 25% done with their big mega rail project that's going to accelerate throughput onto the rails even more than it already is. And they're continuing to dredge further and further up the Savannah River to let those big ships come in. So it's, it's really interesting. I mean, in terms of, you can see OTVI, we're maintaining, healthy volumes that are well up over anything that anything in the last fall. That's happening. It's the way we should think about this market, though. And I was talking to Zach Strickland earlier this morning. Yeah. Is that it actually, when you dig deeper into the data, it still looks a lot like Southern California. So we're seeing a lot of small regional moves to into the distribution center networks around Savannah. So places like Macon, places like Atlanta, even kind of going down into maybe to Jacksonville. Sort of short little moves done by drayage haulers. There's plenty. It seems like there's plenty of capacity. There was a spike in rejections.
Right, I was looking at that.
Mid-March. It only got up to what, about 7, maybe 8%?
At the most, right? But then it just like dived right back down, didn't it?
Yeah, so.
What do you think, what was going on with that trend upwards for most of the month?
I just think that reflects really strong growth. This was, so we got the data for the port container volumes, right? Showing that March was their biggest month ever. So I think that as those volumes were peaking here, you also saw the rejections there. Okay. But it seems like things have normalized. One of the great things about the Port of Savannah, one of the things that makes it so attractive. Actually, if we could go to the next slide, the next chart, that'd be helpful. This next chart is showing container rate prices out of China to North America. So this white line is going to be your China to the North American East Coast. So coming through the Panama Canal, $2,461 per box from China to the East Coast. The green line is going to be your China to the West Coast. It's cheaper. You don't have. It's faster. You don't have to pay port fees, etc. And then this orange line is what we like to call the Panama spread. It's the difference in between those. So you can see there's about a $1,200 difference per box shipping something from China to the West Coast versus the East Coast. So why, if it's $1,200 more, is our Savannah volumes popping off like they are? Well, it's because the port is much more efficient than the West Coast ports. The West Coast ports have notoriously been plagued with a lot of labor issues. There have even been recent slowdowns because of a lot of automation that the people who own the ports want to put in, so that the workers are kind of protesting that. A lot of sort of really tense negotiations. We've covered, all this year, sort of the effects of tariff pullover and how that's clogged up Southern California, not only the warehouse capacity, but also even on the docks. Like the lanes where the trucks would be going into the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach to pick up boxes, they can't even go down those lanes because there's boxes stacked up there. So meanwhile, Savannah has brought down its average dwell time to 27 hours. So that means from the moment the ship hits the port to when that container is on a train headed out of Savannah, 27 hours.
That sounds pretty efficient.
They're turning whole ships in less than a day. So honestly, the play here for infrastructure and for people pushing efficiency at Savannah is they're saying, like, look, it might be $1,200 more to get your box here, but we can actually move your goods into the Midwest faster than they can out of Southern California.
You described some of what they're doing with the infrastructure about dredging more to let some of the vessels in. Are there operations? I guess they are just. Is that a part of it? They're anticipating the growth and they are growing. They're not going to meet their goals until 2020, but in the meantime, I suppose they are still growing.
Their ambition is to be the largest single container port in North America.
Oh wow!
I don't think that means that they'll be larger than Long Beach and LA combined, but they're going to be up in sort of bigger than either one of those. Okay. And they're doing that. Like I said, they're making the whole river deeper so they can build more terminals further inland. They're building more and more of those inland ports, those sort of drayage facilities connected directly by rail to the port. So. I think it's a huge growth market. It's as you say, we're talking about a timeline of years, but it's something that if you're thinking about, if you're a carrier, for example, and you're thinking about, okay, where do I need to put my facilities? Where do I need to put my docks? Which customers can I serve better? Like, there is going to be more and more volume in this market, and we anticipate a steady, even this March was double-digit growth year over year. So that kind of growth for years on end to come.
That's amazing. Well, thanks for the update on that, JP. That is what is happening for us right now. Huge growth, steady volumes happening in Savannah, and yet the efficiency, dwell times going down. Pretty impressive all the way around. That is what is happening for you on this Freight Friday at FreightWaves. Coming live to you each and every business day at 4 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in with us all week long. We've had some great reports this week, and we look forward to seeing you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Share the love on social media. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. And in the meantime, don't worry, be happy.